Hi everyone, this is our first public education session, so we might have a few extra people that you've not seen on these calls before, but tonight we're having a session about sustainability and themed entertainment from Choni Fernandez from Portaventura World and Andreas Anderson from Liseberg. We're going to do a Q&A after the session, so please save your questions for the end of both presentations and then they'll get to your questions. So yeah, Choni, are you ready to start?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much for this invitation, and let us discuss about sustainability. So first of all, I think that the title of this presentation is one of the key learnings that I would like you to have at the end of this session. Sustainability is not a cost, it's an investment. And that's important because, you know, during many years, we have always thought or company managers have probably thought that sustainability was a cost. But we are going to show you when you put an euro on ESG, on sustainability, that is really an investment because you need to think in a mid and long term. But let us start from the beginning. So if we go ahead for the next one, what I would like you to think a little bit about is why we need to embed sustainability in any company. So when people ask me why we need sustainability in the tourist sector or even in our theme parks industry, I used to answer that is not a question of our sector, of our industry. That is our society, that is our planet, that is our world. And that is something that we need to do whatever the company you work. Following, please. Next one. So think a little bit, what is happening environmentally? Do you know that at the beginning of the 70s, we, the humans, were using all the natural resources that the planet was giving to us. But just in 2020, we need 1.6 Earths to satisfy the human needs. So that is really a constraint for any industry, also for us. Next one. You know already what has happened, what is happening with the greenhouse emissions and how the planet is changing. And we are now in this climate situation that is going to give us really uncertain consequences for any industry. Again, for us too. And we know, I guess you already know about the Paris Accord, this Paris Agreement that tries to limit the temperature of the planet. Unfortunately, in the last COP, we didn't reach a very important agreement to continue reducing that. And that is going to harm all our industry again. Following. So we need to prevent this 2.7 degrees of warming. That means that we need to reduce, yes, 45% of the levels of greenhouse pollution, okay? And many companies are already talking about being net zero, not reduction, but being net zero. Then if you want to work in this company, again, in any company, you never need to forget which are the commitments that we all need to follow. And that is going to drive also the kind of projects you can develop and the type of decisions you need to take in this type of companies. Again, next, sorry. Not only we have these emissions, think about this water stress situation. And you have here, you will have this presentation and you will have where the information comes from. But by 2050, more than 2-3 billion people will live in water stress. And that's something, for instance, that we in Spain and in the Mediterranean area are already happening, are already suffering. So we have had last month water restrictions in our area. So if, for instance, you are thinking in develop, if you are thinking in develop a water park in the Mediterranean area, that is something you need to consider because our investments in our industry and our projects are thought as a long-term investments. So water stress, another thing very important to have in mind. Following, next, sorry. But not only what's happening environmentally, what is happening with our human society. The population expect to exceed 9 billion by 2050. Please, I don't know if you have seen this graph before, but please see how the line has really increased, incredible, from the middle century, okay, from 20. So that's something we need to consider, because that is going to even stress more the natural resources we are going to use. So again, if we think about theme parks, if we think about parks, if we think about which are the resources that our business needs, we need to know that we are going to be under stress because of this natural resources shortage. And that is going to result in higher prices, in higher, in less offer. So something else to consider. Next. Not only that, the difference between poor and I would say middle class has even growth. Even when worldwide, poor people, what we consider poor people, has decreased, the difference between the middle class and the poor class is growing. So we are polarizing the society between poor and middle and high high standard class, okay, people. Next one. Also, equity, diversity, inclusion, these are new words, more relevant even than they were before. Do you remember all the issues about Black Matter in US? Do you remember all what consequences that we have socially because of pandemic, crisis situation, what is happening in many countries? That can have really big consequences in your business. Following. Digital transparency, all what we have said before, all these Black Matter issues, for instance, this corporate behavior can now be tracked really on time with our new social media. Do you remember this case that I put here about the United Airlines? They lose nearly 1 billion in value after the video of Dr. David Daho, who was removed from a flight. So imagine what can happen, whatever business industry you have, if something happens, what we have said from the previous slide. If you have an issue with an employee in one of your facilities, that can be nowadays very easy, spread into the social media, and everybody across the globe will know about that. So social media really empowers consumers to interact and engage brands also. Following. Next, sorry. We all are representing also a brand. We are a company not only for the product, for the B2C, that is obviously, but also we are selling services. We also represent brands. Following an Avas study, most people will not care if 74% of brands disappears. So what people and what our clients, our guests want, they are really brands that can improve the quality of life. And here we arrive to the point that we in our industry, we can be very powerful because we are working in an industry that can really impact positively on the people who visit us. So we can be part of this 20% of brands that really improves quality life of people because we make people happy, okay? Next one. Last but not least, in the society where we are living, we are transforming ourselves, we are evolving. I always explain that my grandmother was even more sustainable than my generation is. And hopefully you that are younger than I and my children are going to be also more sustainable because you have grown up knowing that the planet has limited resources, something that my generation forgot. So what we are now facing is a more sustainable mind travelers. Okay, next. That is a survey from Booking, and they say that 56% of the interviewed people say that if there was an option to offset their carbon footprint, they would do. 68% thought that the money they spend on traveling should go back on the local community. 72% believe that they need to act now, to make sustainable travel, okay? And 71% feel that travel companies should offer more sustainable choices. So even when you don't believe in all the points I have explained before, what is happening environmentally, you don't think that the society is changing so much. Even for your clients, you need to consider sustainability in your business, because we are in this business where we are receiving more and more sustainable mind visitors. Next one. So that is a very old purpose, but what we should do now in our business to embed sustainability is to meet the needs of our present, but without compromising the ability of future generations.
Nee, niet op mijn laptop.
Sorry? Okay. So we are working all together for a responsible tourism that takes full account of our current and future economic, social, and environmental impacts. Okay, next one. So we all, okay, don't worry. So we all need to work to protect the environment, to deliver value to our customers. You know, we should be a brand that creates value and impact positively in our customers, not only on customers, on people. That means also employees. We must invest in our employees. Then we need to deal with our suppliers. They are also people, they are also companies, and they can be really our partners. That is sustainability. Don't think only on sustainability as an environmental part of the impacts of the company environmental side. We need to have a broad, a bigger scope of what is sustainability. Sustainability nowadays means environmental, but social, but governance also. So we need to support communities, and of course, we also need to generate long-term value for shareholders. We are not NGOs, okay? What we are private companies normally, or public companies, but we have shareholders or owners that we need to give them back the money they have put on our companies, okay? We need to grow with the money of our shareholders or owners. So that is also important. Next one. So taking that into consideration, sustainability is defined today as environmental. So that means how a company manage the environmental footprint, social, how the company manage the relationship with people, and we have said that people are employees, suppliers, customers, and communities where you will develop your activity, and governance, how you really conduct your business. So after this introduction that I think it's very important to know and to have always in mind, for any business, but also for our industry. Next one, please. I would like to explain what was the Portaventura journey. So Portaventura opened its doors in 1995 in an area, as I have told you before, that we have water stress. In fact, when I was a child, when we opened the tube, the water was not drinkable. So at the end of the 80s, after Disney went to Paris, in the area, the local government and the central government tried together with Anheuser-Busch to implement and to follow a dream that it was to construct and to build this theme park, the first theme park in Spain. But the area had no water. So they decide to create a park having a closed cycle of water. Okay, so that's the reason why the first years of Portaventura journey was really linked to improve the use of natural resources. For instance, we are using the water of the rain in our central lake in the Mediterranean area that after a treatment is used for the water rights. And many, many other examples related to the natural resources usage. That's the reason why 2 years after the opening, in 1997, we created the environmental committee team called Green Team that is still working nowadays. And this team, where people from different departments belong to, they create the environmental KPIs. It was a continuously improvement system. So they got the first environmental policy, the first EMA certification already in 2001, and whatever new ride, park, hotel, convention center that nowadays comprises all what is Portaventura World, all our sites are inside EMAS, that is our environmental certification. So that was really the first years until 2008. In 2008, we give the second the second phase of the sustainability, taking into consideration people, taking into consideration new employees, policies, taking into consideration, for instance, social audits in the factories in China where we were buying and we still buy some of our merchandise for shops. And we did that through the commitment to the Global Compact. And that is very important because Global Compact has 10 principles that we have adapted to our own policies. That was in 2008. So we moved from the environmental part and we complement that with the social part. Another thing, another year that I would like to highlight is 2011. This social impact became even greater when we create the Portaventura Foundation. We decide, and the shareholders decided, that 0.7 of the profit of Portaventura was going directly to a foundation that was focused on children and youth at risk of exclusion. That was perhaps for illness, for disabilities, or for social exclusion. And that was really important because it was a move and a link to our local communities. Remember what we have said at the beginning. Any company cannot live back to the community where they are implemented. And that's something that we have really changed with the Portaventura Foundation. I would say that the last period of Portaventura sustainability journey has been really focused on the governance part. And why? That's because normative rules, the pressure of the governments has changed, and you need to be even more transparent than before. So you can see how we have created code of ethics for our professional conduct. We have portal screening for suppliers. We ask the suppliers not only to have good product, good service at good price, We ask them to be committed as we are with the Global Compact principles. We ask them, which is your environmental policy with the product or service that you sell to us? So that's the reason from the last period, you will see more and more standards. So nowadays, you need to publish in Spain by law your sustainability report that is used, in our case, as our non-financial disclosure. And that's something that we need to present annually. And as we start to create the sustainability reports in 2009, when that became by law, we had really a track. And we need just to improve, because there is always a way to improve. But then we need, for instance, to audit. And that's what we are doing now. We are following the GRI standard for our sustainability reports. And the sustainability report is audited by KPMG. Okay, so step by step, year by year, we have created a very solid ESG sustainability playground for our business. Now we are really adapt to what the society, to the climate change, because we are analyzing the consequences of the climate change to our business and what our business is doing to the climate change. We are reducing our emissions. We have commitments with the science-based target initiatives to know really which are the emissions, how much we need to reduce our emissions. These are some examples that I want to share with you. But as I say normally, we have prepared, that is like a dish we have cooked very slow. That is not a fast food. So sustainability at Portaventura has gone step by step, starting from something small, consolidating, and getting it bigger, year by year, new commitments, new achievements, including all new business units in the commitments we had, using sustainable development goals as an instrument to explain what we were doing and to make understand our stakeholders that we can really influence with our business to the goals of 2030. So next, if I could share with you which are the key learnings of this journey of 25 years working in sustainability, is that each company has its own sustainability journey. As you have seen at Portaventura, we have started in the environmental part because we were in a water stress area. So for us, that was yes or no to develop a project like Portaventura. So it really depends where your business are going to be developed. It's going to be in Europe, it's going to be in South America, it's going to be in Africa, it's going to be perhaps a multinational worldwide. You will face different constraints, initiatives. If you are, for instance, I don't know, Nespresso coffee, they are worried about where they grow the coffee. How are the communities working in this process of growing the coffee? They have another type of start point for the sustainability that we don't have. I also like to say that there is always a strongest action in any company that can be used as a starting point to develop a sustainability plan. Another thing that I'm going to share with you now, our sustainability strategic plan. I always reject this type of companies that they start from nothing to a very complete strategic plan with 20 or 50 projects and actions. That is not feasible. That is not possible. It's, in my opinion, it's better to start with even with 2, 3 actions in the environmental, social, and governance. It doesn't matter. Perhaps first year you are focused on renewable energy, or perhaps you are focused on waste management. You need to do and study what is your major impact on environmental part, and they take actions on your major impact. And year by year, step by step, you will be able to grow and to make it really embed in your company and across all the departments of your company. So, as you have seen, we have started small with a green team in 1997. And today we have a very complex system and a strategic plan in ESG with so many projects and actions that are prepared across the company. That is very important, you know, that this embed into the company. And I repeat that different times because, you know, people ask me, but how many people do you have working in sustainability at PortAventura? Really? Only one person, sorry, and it's not me, because I'm taking care also of other departments. I'm leading a department that englobes more than sustainability. And how can this happen? Because each department should do their activities according to the commitments we have decided into the company. That means that if we talk about diversity, if we talk about talent retention, that is something from human resources. They need to develop the project and actions that have been decided in the board of directors, and they need to give the deliveries followed by KPIs to know that they are really working in that sense. The same happens with the maintenance department. They are also the energy managers, for instance, and they know they need to be efficient. Every year, they need to be more efficient. So they need to ask for the investments that they need to reduce the company energy consumption. Also, the procurement department, they know that they need to ask to the suppliers to deliver goods with some standards in terms of environmental, in terms of social. Where do these products came from? As I told you before, if they came from factories overseas, they need to ask for a social audit, for instance. So that is when sustainability is embedded in the whole organization. All stakeholders should be involved, especially employees. That is important. Everybody can do something. Everybody needs to know that the company is working beyond the profit, that the company will be successful in the long term when they take into consideration all the impacts on the different stakeholders we have seen. It's essential the support of the CEO, of course, and the top management, and communication is key. It's very important to do, but it's also very important to communicate, to make your customers understand why you are doing that or why you are not doing that. And that is something that autocritic, I should say that at PortAventura, we have not done really well, because that was considered the sustainability, something that we were doing in the backstage, not in the front stage. You enter in our website and you even see nothing about sustainability. It was thought that it's something that the guests don't care, but that's not true. And now we need to put a lot of efforts to communicate what we have been doing during ages. At least nobody can tell us that we are greenwashers, that we are doing greenwashing, because it's something, as you have seen, that we have a track record of different certifications that help us to make. So next one. I bring to you how we have a structure of a strategic plan, environmental, social, and governance. Each one has different projects pipeline, and each project pipeline has at least 2 or 3 projects or actions. So when we talk about environmental, we have projects linked to circular economy, sustainability and safe mobility, climate change and water, or energy transition. The same happens in social. We talk about employee health and safety. We talk about quality of employment. So I don't need to read all that, but you know, it's really well structured. Next one. And some of the examples about what we have achieved in these last 3 years of a strategic plan of sustainability is, for instance, the zero waste result. You know that the main impact in our industry is not a factory. Our emissions, they are really very low, but we have a very big impact because we have millions of people attending our sites. So waste is really the big impact that our industry has. So it was really important for us trying to recover most part of the waste we were generating. So we have been focused during 5 years to achieve this certification, because that means that we are recovering more than 90% of the waste that we are producing. And just for comparing, for a company like Walt Disney, that for us is always a benchmark, they have this goal for 2030. So we are really happy to do that. And in 2022, I can tell you that the percentage at the end of the year that we will be achieved is 98% of waste generated is going to be recovered. Another really milestone is the solar plant project that takes near 4 years of bureaucratic tramites in Spain, unbelievable. And that is going to provide us 30% of the electricity consumption really produced with renewable energies. Disney is also growing even a much bigger plant than we have, because their plan is going to have 24 field pitches, but as they are much bigger than us, it's going to represent 70% of resource needs. Following. In terms of social, first, in terms of reduction of emissions, we start calculating our emissions even when we are not a factory. We were calculating our emission. That was important to know. And it's not easy to do this calculation. And after this calculation that we have started in 2008, we have been able to reduce 70%, mainly because scope 2 emissions came from electricity. So we ask our supplier to supply us just with renewable energy. That is not the same that we are producing our own renewable energy. We ask our companies to be supplied by this renewable energy. And because of that and another measures, we were able to reduce 70% of the emissions, direct emissions, scope 1 and 2. And in 2019, we decided to compensate. That is, you put into the market projects that compensate the emissions you generate. You know that is a market. It's a very complicated market, but okay. It's a credit carbon market. And we buy credits, in our case, to invest in Guatemala, because all the portfolio companies belonging to the same shareholders, we decide to go all with the same project in order to have more impact on that. And we are very happy to contribute to the conservation of this important Guatemala coast project, because you know that from this area live 10% of the total birds of the planet. And we have a biodiversity also program in our park because we have a show with birds. And also it's a 360 project because we are helping women, especially these girls, to have education and health and healthcare. Next one. In terms of social, and because of we create the Portaventura Foundation, we are able to change hospitals in our area to bring a part of Portaventura with shows, with characters going there. And I really encourage you, whatever you are, whatever company you belong to do that, to be more close to these children who have lost the possibility to visit our parks, our facilities. And because of this experience, we decided to create a Portaventura, our own Give Kids the World village, that also copying some initiatives, because sustainability is never a competition. It's always a thing to share, okay? So we create Portaventura Dreams, where we host families with ill children, free of charge, totally free, during 1 week in order to improve their emotional state. So that is really a positive impact on these very special clients. Next one. So, and all that, we have our dashboard. That is the dashboard I personally present to the board of directors. We need to follow all the projects and all the actions through these KPIs. If we are saying to the different stakeholders that we are eliminating the reference of single plastic, I need to put how is working that. And you can see in Q1, we didn't reach the percentage that we have as goal, and it was in Q3 where we reached that. But for instance, the emissions of CO2 relative figures per 1,000 visitors were not achieved during all the year. And even in Q4, I think we are not going to achieve. So very transparent. You need to follow your actions and your projects on ESG to really give a coherent and solid progress on your sustainability programs following. And all these informations, we are summarizing them in what I told you before, that is our sustainability report. And you will see this journey of the sustainability at Portaventura, because the first sustainability reports were really very small, just few pages, a brochure perhaps. But the last sustainability reports from 2020, 2021 is already on the website. You have here our website. They are really books, books with KPIs following the global reporting initiatives with all the audits from these third parties. That is really very important. Okay, and last, because I think I take some more time than I should, next one, is that we can use characters. For instance, we are using Oscar de Groot to communicate to our clients about sustainability. Use the characters. Sustainability is not a backstage activity. They should go to the front, and we can teach, and we have the best partners that are children, new generations that are growing, okay? So I think that I have no time. I have some slides more, but I think that the most important message I have given to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really hope that's changed people's views of sustainability, because that was really interesting to hear how Portaventura are implementing this, not only in environmental ways, but in social and governance aspects too. Andreas, are you ready to go?
I am indeed. Give me 1 second. I'll just start sharing my screen.
Just as a reminder, if you have any questions, write them down and you can send them in the chat after Andreas is finished.
Do you see my screen now?
Yeah, all good.
Wonderful. But first of all, thank you very much for this invitation. I see a lot of recognize a lot of faces here on the screen, and that makes me very comfortable and makes me also feel a little bit less old. I did a presentation this spring at the SAID conference here at Liseberg, talking about sustainability, and for those of you who attended this conference, a lot of this presentation is actually the same, not entirely, but there are some similarities. And while I think Choni did a fantastic job sort of explaining, you could say, the whole framework around sustainability and why it's important for a company, the idea of this presentation is basically to break it down a little, to make it very tangible, and also maybe you could say make it a bit easier to address, because I think a lot of the trouble that many of us have is that it feels so far-reaching and complicated, and the idea here is basically to make it a little bit less so. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about the why, which was also, I think, a good chunk of Choni's presentation. Then I'm going to talk about the business application and some of the tools that actually exist today. And then I'm sort of going to take you through a 5-step approach to how you can address this, and then end off with a few examples from Liseberg. But if I start with the why, it's kind of interesting, because I think when I started presenting on sustainability, let's say 3 or 4 years ago, you always had to really explain why this was important, especially when you talk to colleagues from the industry. But today it is, I would say, much less so. I think most of us know that this is really a very far-reaching and very important topic for us to address, not just as companies, but also as societies. But it's also an agenda that kind of like creeps closer to us all the time. When I presented this spring, one of the starting points of my presentation was this poster that I took a picture of a few days before the conference, and this is basically a circus poster from a Swedish circus traveling around this region. And one thing kind of catched my eyes, and it's this thing that I'm marking here. And it actually says in Swedish, "This show is animal free." And I thought it was sort of a funky example of how something that we took for granted just a few years ago is actually something that is determining whether people will choose our facility or our experience or not. And if we stay with this topic of animals and professional care, it's definitely one of the first issues, I would say, that we as an industry, as the attraction industry, has had to address. If you take the whole debacle with SeaWorld and Blackfish a few years ago as an example, in my opinion, that debate, which this documentary Blackfish followed, this documentary of Blackfish, was not really about biased journalism or the power of social media. It was really representing a much larger and more widespread cultural change, and something that had happened without we as an industry really noticing it. And I think animal-based attractions, if we stay with this group of attractions, really will have to answer one very simple question in the future, and that is why we have animals in captivity, and how it can help the greater good, whether it's conservation or it's education. But I think these discussions does not really represent just a shift in culture, but also the fact that sustainability in its broadest sense can impact the very core of our business models. And as mentioned by Choni, I think sustainability will really be the determining factor for us in the future, for us as a society, for us as an industry, but also for us as companies. And when you try to operate a company sustainably or in a sustainable way, there are really, you could say, 3 keys. You want to minimize the negative impacts of your business. You want to create other types of values for relevant stakeholders, and you want to think long term. So minimizing negative impact, creating other types of values, and again, trying to think long term. And this long term perspective is probably the most important, in my opinion. But again, how do we address this? And it can seem very complicated and overwhelming. But again, as mentioned in this presentation, I'm going to break it down a little. One of the really interesting things about sustainability is that we have to rethink value management. And if there's one slide from this slideshow I want you to remember, it's this one. And it's not even mine because I copied it from somebody else that is much smarter than me. But basically what it explains is that in past times when we thought about creating value in a company, we always focused on shareholder value. So it's all about maximizing the value of the company, the profits that we could pay out to the owners. And then we basically externalized all other types of negative consequences of our business. The whole, you could say, the whole environmental movement in the 60s and especially in the 70s was basically, you could say, was really addressing the fact that a lot of companies were just polluting and they didn't care about workers' rights and anything negative that came with running a business. It was just externalized. Then in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and to some extent also the 90s, we talk more about shared value. And when we talk about shared value, it's really all about, again, maximizing profit, maximizing value for the owners, but then we kind of compensate by doing good elsewhere. You could also argue that for example, CO2 offsetting belongs to this category. In other words, if you run a hotel and you buy you offset the CO2 consequences of this hotel operation, we're kind of in this middle group where we try to balance our business again by doing good elsewhere. You could also argue the same with like charity programs. This is also a good example. And again, we are there as well, and right now as at Liseberg. I'll come back to that later. But in the future, we're going to talk much more about system value. And when we talk about system value, you could say companies are not just we're not just trying to offset the negative consequences of what we do. We're actually being used as tools in creating a transition. Okay. One example here is for example, the new EU taxonomy, where I'm losing my voice here, where financial institutions are used to drive a green transition. And this is basically the future. In the future, all companies should actually be used to again create this transition. Obviously, when we talk about sustainability, there are a lot of tools out there we can use. You probably know the UN SDGs, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, that basically kind of set the direction for us as societies. This is something that most countries in the world have adopted in their long-term planning. There are also, as another example, UN Global Compact, which is something that most companies can be part of. We are part of it right now, which are basically principles that you adhere to as a company. Then there is another example, which is the Global Reporting Initiative, GRI, which is you could say, a framework about how you report your results, annual results. And GRI is actually quite good in the sense that when you start reporting something, you actually also very often start doing it. So that's also a good framework to know about. And then obviously there are a number of standards of which you could say some of the ISO standards, which are global, are probably the most well known. There are also now coming more standards that are focused on the traction in industry. For example, there is a French standard done by SNELAC, which is really, really good. There's also a Danish standard done by the Danish Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions, which can also be used by attractions. And basically, if you kind of pull some of these frameworks together, you could say that the UN SDGs and the UN Global Compact basically tells you, the direction, what do we want to achieve, and then the goals and standards and the global reporting initiative, and also, of course, the national legislation tells you more about the how. But again, it's quite complicated and not so easy to navigate. If we move forward to Liseberg and this 5-step approach, the first step is obviously, and was also to us, to know where we were. And a few years ago, we did a brand survey, which was actually quite a little bit of an eye opener to us, because we do this on a regular basis. We measure how strong the brand is in the marketplace. And basically, one of the things that we realized was the fact that on one specific parameter, which was sustainability, this is in Swedish, but sustainability, we actually did not perform very well. So, I mean, the Liseberg brand in a Swedish context is extremely strong. I mean, we were usually top 5, but when it came to sustainability, we did not perform very well. So what we did was we did a gap analysis in relation to this ISO 26000 standard, which I just mentioned. And basically, this was another eye-opener, because on some of the areas where we thought we were really performing very well, for example, on environment, which is called miljö here, this is in Swedish, we had been certified in accordance with a Swedish environmental standard for, I think, 10 years, and we thought we were doing a really good job, but we actually weren't. So this was another eye opener for us, and I think it's always, again, if you want to start a journey, it's always good to kind of know where you are, and this gave us a good starting point on where to actually work with sustainability at Liseberg. The second step here was to set a direction. And basically, we've always been, you could say, using sort of a balanced scorecard model at Liseberg, where we kind of try to balance the financial performance of the company with our employee satisfaction, with the strength of our brand, and with the guest satisfaction. But we added a 5th dimension, and that was sustainability. And basically, the idea here is whether we can create some sort of leverage to leverage sustainability in such a way that they can actually make us better in relation to our performance when it comes to guests, employees, brand, and also financial performance. So the whole steering model was actually changed by adding this. The third step for us was to choose a method. And we chose to begin with GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative, as a starting point. And basically, when you start reporting using the GRI framework, it will have you to do this. You have to do 2 things. You have to create a stakeholder analysis where you actually map all the relevant stakeholders, and also try to identify, what parts of your business are actually relevant to these stakeholders. And second, you create what is called a materiality analysis, where you define, you could say, some of the areas that are most important for the stakeholders and also most important for you as a company when it comes to sustainability. Because I think it's very important to understand that you can't do everything at the same time. You have to focus on certain things. And we have decided to focus on resource and climate efficiency, on contribution to the local community, to be a really good workplace, a safe and secure environment, and really emphasize job satisfaction, service, and equality. So these are basically the main or the key issues we focus on in our work. The fourth step is about having ambitions. And basically, we have ambitions when it comes to all, you could say, the dimensions we have been working with traditionally when it comes to guests, satisfaction, to employees, brand, and financials. But we also added sustainability. And the ambition of Liseberg is to be a world leader in sustainable park operations. That's basically what we want to achieve. And with that, we also updated our whole strategic framework so that we both, you could say, put an emphasis on sustainable development as part of our strategy. In other words, it's actually as important for us as it is to work with digital transformation or investments in the park or the development of the destination. But also, you could say that our long-term goals with the company is actually to create the foundation for long-term financial sustainability. That's basically the economic goal we have. And then lastly, as the fifth step, it is very important to work systematically with this. We've chosen an ISO standard, ISO 20121, as the starting point for the framework around our work. It is still a really, really good framework for us. And again, it has created a lot of efficiency in the way we work with this issue. All right. To wrap up, I'll give you a few examples on how we work with sustainability, and I think this is where it becomes a bit more concrete and tangible. Basically, one area which we have been working with, for a number of years is, of course, green energy. We have been driven or been purchasing green energy for the last 12 years. We've owned our own windmills since 2010, and especially today, when we have the energy crisis in Northern Europe, I can honestly say that has been a really good investment. And one of the challenges we have now moving forward is actually again building out the energy production within, you could say, the framework agreements that we have. We're opening a big water park in 2024, and that is a high energy consumption operation, and therefore we will have to address this and actually investing in new energy sources moving forward. Another example is obviously food. And if you do a CO2 mapping, and I'll come back to that a little bit later, you will understand that energy consumption and transportation is actually the primary issue, but on a second or third place will food consumption, or the food you serve, will also be a really, really high impact factor. We, as an example, we opened the first vegetarian restaurant in an amusement park in 2015. I can honestly say it was not a good business to begin with, but today it is. It's really becoming a very integrated part of what we offer, and I think we're going to see a lot more of these initiatives in parks around the world in the future. A third example is, of course, single-use plastic, which is something that I think all parks have been working with over the last years. And especially in Europe, there will actually be a ban on single-use plastic from 2024. So this is really something where I think a lot of parks will work quite a lot in the years to come, not just on single-use plastic, but on single-use utensils altogether. You will actually, by law, you will have to provide an alternative from 2024. And this is something, so there will be a lot of focus on packaging in the years to come. I mentioned the water park just before. We're opening our new hotel in 2023 and our new water park in 2023. The hotel will be BREEAM certified. In other words, it will be built to the highest environmental standard. And that environmental standard does not exist when it comes to the water park. But we will really try to operate the water park as efficiently as we can. It will actually be, I think, the first water park in the world that will be heated by community heating or central heating provided by the city, which will be very interesting. But again, we will really try to make sure that this high energy consumption operation will be run very, very efficiently. A fifth and very important example, I think, for any parks is accessibility. And I think actually here we have a very long tradition in our industry. I think a lot of our colleagues around the industry, they do accessibility really, really well. Take Disney as an example. I think that's really probably one of the most accessible spare time or leisure activities you can have today. But again, here we're also seeing a development all the time, and we have to make sure that we are addressing, you could say, new and updated needs in a structured and good way also in the future. Then there is the role as a workplace, and I think this is actually one of the areas where we're really focusing also a lot these years. You know, and when we talk about our role as a workplace, it's not just about health and safety and the basics. I think we have to have very high ambitions, and if we are not a sustainable company, I think future generations of employees will not choose to work for us. We have to, of course, to work with all the basics, which, you know, equality and inclusion and everything else that comes with these issues. But again, I think our role as an employer is really going to develop over the years to come, and I think sustainability is a very, very integral part of that development. I also mentioned as one of my last examples, this CO2 mapping, where you actually measure your carbon footprint. And one of the really, really big challenges for industry like ours is the fact that a lot of your carbon footprint is actually not yours, in the sense that a lot of the carbon footprint from our activities are actually not what we do in the park, but transportation of especially guests to and from the park. More than 90% of our carbon footprint at Liseberg is actually transportation, and a lot of it we don't control, which illustrates that it's not an entirely simple equation to address. Also, when you address again energy consumption and again CO2. But we have to start with ourselves, and then we just have to hope that guests will also slowly transition into more sustainable ways of transportation in the future. My last example here is actually again about this you could say community contribution, in the sense that we are owned by the municipality of Gothenburg, meaning that one of the reasons why we are owned by the municipality is because we create these other types of values than just the value of the economic contribution we send up into the city. We create a lot of dynamic impacts. So we always say that for every euro we turn over at Liseberg, 3.5 euros are turned over in the city on transportation, on accommodation, on food and beverage, and on shopping. And then again, there are also the employment impacts, which are important for the city. I think that's also an area that is quite important, something we measure and also try to maximize. And all of these examples, whether it's food and beverage, or it's energy consumption, or it's accessibility or whatever, I think the last thing which is important to also understand here is the fact that we have to we have to also communicate this. We have started implementing a communication concept about sustainability, where we actually do a bit more than Portaventura and Choni, in the sense that we've always had the you could say the strategy that we should do it and not talk about it, but now we also talk about it. And again, if we want to be a world leader in sustainable park operations, we also have to communicate about what we do. And the good news is it actually works, because as mentioned earlier on, when we measured our brand equity 6 years ago, we were actually not considered to be a sustainable brand. But last year, when the Sustainable Brand Index listed all the companies in Sweden, we were actually the #1 sustainable brand in the travel and tourism category. So it sort of shows you that you can actually move not just the way you operate a company, but also how it is being perceived if you work again systematically and have ambitions in this area. That was my slides, and I apologize for the coughing attack. It always happens.
No worries. Thank you very much, both of you. That was a lot of information to take in, but it was nice. You played really well off each other, I think, in broadening that scope. Chuck your questions in here, folks, so I can do them. But what's an interesting thing from both of you, from my perspective anyway, is I think when I used to think about a theme park, it was kind of like an island. It was out there and it really only engaged with the community with a few charitable things and employment. But you really need to be a good neighbor, you know, and really be investing in your community on all levels. And yeah, I mean, is it more and more that way? Or that's just a no-brainer at this point? Andreas?
No, I totally, I think you really nail it, in the sense that I think that you know, being a good citizen and also, I mean, I think we're all, in a sense, moving from being financially driven to become more value driven in the way that we operate our companies, and I think that's a good thing. It's a needed thing. If we want to, you know, if we want to stay in business long term, but also, you know, hand over this earth, as Choni mentioned, that we kind of use 4 or 5 times right now, over every year, and so I think it's about, you know, shifting from just financial performance to a much more value driven look at how we operate.
Okay.
Yes, totally agree with Andreas. I mean, we know, and I think that we both are in successful projects, but for instance, in Spain, we have different examples in our industry that have not been so successful. And we think, really, we truly think that is because they have tried not to be involved into the community where they try to develop the project, you know? So as I have said, you cannot create a project in our industry behind giving your back to the community where you want to implement it. That is impossible. That is impossible because, you know, our business needs many people to work on site, but we are also hosting thousands of guests per day. So it's going to have an impact in your community, but also positive impact for all the suppliers that you have around. You can make your area even bigger. We play a very important role, Portaventura, in our area in Catalonia, you know. So and that's something that you need to work with, and you need to understand the needs, and you need to try to find this balance, as Andreas has explained. You need to think beyond your profits.
Yeah. Good. Thank you for that. Gavin would like to know, do you have any tips on how you balance the seriousness of things like ISO with building engagement on these topics? I had a good giggle out of Andreas, so I'll take him.
Yeah, no, but it's a really, 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 really good question, and I think it's probably one of the challenges that we are working most with right now, because I think we've, again, you know, when I talk about sustainability today, it's all about, again, about structure and frameworks and certification and I think if we really, really want to make a difference, it's about creating a culture. and I think it's a different mindset. You know, I think we've had to sort of create the structure around how we work, and that has been important. I think there's a lot of, you know, we've had to, you know, train people and train management and our board and all that in why this is important. That's all great, but it's really when you create a culture, you can create a momentum. You know, you can sometimes it feels, and I think Joni probably has the same experience, that it feels that you're a little bit alone. You're trying to push this giant rock, and it's not really moving. but then suddenly, if you have more people pushing, you can create some sort of momentum, and this process should ideally, you know, this rock should actually start moving by itself, and you want to reach that point. And the only way you can reach that point is by creating a culture, and culture you can only create by, you know, again, by celebrating the good examples, by communication, training, you know, it's that long-term culture change, I think, which is important. Joni.
Yeah, and I think that is also important, you know, that we give feedback on what all employees are doing. So if you really, I don't know, switching off lights, you are helping our company to really achieve this goal, and you are really working with the Sustainable Development Goals also in I don't know, in number 13. It's climate change, you know, so there is always a storytelling that is current and consistent across the company. So then they understand, okay, we work on the ISO because we want to follow, we work because we want to have an improvement system, because you need to be better and better every year. So I think we use the certification as an instrument, you know, to follow what we want to achieve, and also to have a third party that really is auditing what you are doing, because another thing that we always try to avoid is to have some kind of misunderstanding, greenwashing in the middle of something like that. Yeah. So step by step.
Okay. A question from Ben: what hard skills would you recommend learning to be in a position to take on this type of reporting in a future career? So those reports you showed were colorful, entertaining, and full of facts, but like, who assembles those? So what type of skills are in short supply on this call, but high in demand?
Okay, sustainability nowadays have some kind of also certification, especially you need to learn and to read a lot of standards. Standards are changing. Andreas has explained about this new EU regulatory system, and it's going to increase a lot what we have learned, what we are listening, what we are reading from the European countries. Because, you know, Europe is leading the change. Have you listened about the COP? So really, Europe is leading the change across the globe. That is not the same situation in US, obviously not in Asia. So I think that nowadays there are different courses that someone can follow, but to work in an industry like in our industry, I think that you need to be passionate of sustainability. And you cannot be a passionate of sustainability in your position at a company if you are not also privately in your own life. So you really need to believe what you are doing, and you need to work as an activator inside your company. We have in the company sustainability ambassadors. They are people, whatever the position they have in the company, that they work as ambassadors inside their own departments. And that's in something that, I don't know, is something natural. There are people who, I don't know, two persons working in maintenance, one is ambassador, the other is not. Why? Because you have that in your NDA, perhaps. And that's a way also to start your career. I have not studied for being a sustainability leader, but it's something that came to me, and it was really parallel with my private life. So at the end, I feel really comfortable. And as I said before, please be coherent in your life and consistent.
Very good. And coming off that question, though, when you talk about your sustainability leaders, because I always term that too, or being passionate about it. It's like being a champion. You're championing the subject. And so Luca was curious, do you kind of reinforce with your park staff to be open about and kind of educate guests in conversation about sustainability, or is it something that's a little more subtle?
I think for us, it's probably a little bit more subtle, but we've also had some quite interesting, what we call nudging projects over the last few years. For example, if you have a menu, if you and it's especially if it's a digital menu, you can actually test the way you present the different menu items. So for example, if you have a vegetarian option and you move it at the top of the menu, you will actually see that the sale of that increase considerable. So we try to do those things, and we also try to, for example, have water posts all around the park so that people can fill or refill refillable bottles and stuff like that. But we try to do it in a way where we don't force feed them, but we give them options, and then we nudge them as well as we can. But we, as mentioned by Chonia, we also have an ambassador program here. We're actually starting an ambassador program here. And the ambassador program will actually be based on our seasonal employees, because we see that there is a huge interest and also there's so much energy there that we have to tap into.
Absolutely. That's what's so great about this group.
Exactly.
It's like, I feel like I was born 30 years too early, because, the whole idea of companies should be invested in the community, because the community is what's going to support them. You shouldn't be concerned about the short sale. You should be concerned about the repeat sale, and continue to build that brand loyalty and things that I guess I always felt that it was talked about, but not really believed, and now I think we might finally be going into that arc of the cycle that we'll start seeing some positive growth and more people feeling that they're part of a positive energy and a positive process. So, okay, cool.
There's one thing that I forgot to explain during my presentation, and it's very important. Okay. Additionally to all these standards that we need to follow and all the commitments, what we run every 2 years is a stakeholder survey. We ask different stakeholders, employees, customers, suppliers, what do you expect from Portaventura in terms of sustainability? And this is really important because, we were working, perhaps the company, the managers, we think that it's very important to work on that. But really, what, for instance, for employees, they thought that was really important to invest in health. So then we develop a special program that is Portaventura Healthy Program, different workshops, for instance, to give up smoking, to improve, and we create a gym. We have a gym inside Portaventura nowadays. So because of these initiatives, And probably widow managers, we never thought to have a
No.
gym inside Portaventura, but that's what they asked us to do. So it's also very important to talk to them. And I know, Andreas, they do focus groups with customers and so on. And it's really important because this is the way you really engage with your different stakeholders, where you give answers to their requirements, to their questions, and so on. So even, I never thought that someone came to Portaventura because we are very sustainable. That is not true. They came because we have Shambhala, Dragon Gun, it's funny, and so on. But it doesn't happen with the B2C business, when we have our convention center. I can explain to you that 2 years ago, we had the convention. There was a Google convention. And I was really happy, and I become really the queen of sustainability when Google asked, sorry, before you send me any quotation, I would like to review your sustainability report. Then I will decide if I come or not. Oh my God, Johnny. Everything yes, that was really my wow moment. Everything comes true, it's like, what? They want the sustainability report to decide if they came to our, and that's the way things change, so it's important to ask them, to ask your suppliers, to customers, your employees, what can we do for you? What do you expect from a company like us to deliver you in terms of sustainability?
But Joni, just to add to that, I think there's also this schism that we, when we talk about, when we talk to marketing people, for example, there may not be that many guests that actually choose us because we're sustainable. I totally agree with you. But what we're trying to do here is actually avoid the risk of them choosing something else. And I think that's really probably for me the most important thing here, because I think that in the future, take a different example, cruise lines. What is the future of cruise lines if they don't solve their CO2 emission issue? I think a lot of people will actually start not choosing them. So I think there is, I think there is that risk as well for us. If we're not sustainable, we may actually be,
yes,
pulled off the list.
From the wish list for holidays and so on. Yes, I totally agree.
Maybe too, you may not get guests because you're sustainable, but I bet you get employees.
Exactly.
You're right.
Especially because of the age group you're bucking for and that kind of thing. Bunyard has a question about that. He said, so how can you align the 3 Ps, people, planet, and profit, within a theme park in a way that each is recognized?
I can add on to what Joni said before, because I think they're actually aligned very differently in different parts of the world. Because I think, as Joni mentioned, I think Europe is probably where we have the best alignment. It's a very balanced look at sustainability, but in you could say North America, it's a completely different balance, and there's a lot of focus on environmental sustainability right now. If you go to Latin America, it's very much about people, the social dimension. So it is. I think it's a balance that actually is quite different in different markets. But obviously, if you want to operate sustainable, you have to balance them, all 3 of them, in a good way. But right now it's a little different from market to market.
Yes, that's true. It's a question of balance, and obviously we need the profit. We need the revenues, because if not, there is no company. There is a company, everything is dead. So,
and sorry, I was going to say, to that end, you had mentioned about managing, or educating rather, your senior management. So have you found, well, I guess in both of your instances, you've found them flexible enough to be willing to engage the discussion, but kind of theme park industry wide, what feeling do you have when it comes to winning over those And I will say Adam used old school, highly skeptical types.
It's getting better, I would say.
Yeah.
It's getting better. But I would also still say that we as an industry, we are behind the curve. I mean, I think again, it's probably because we hadn't had that burning platform as much as maybe, for example, the cruise lines have right now. I mean, yeah, I attended a meeting a few months ago with the EU Commissioner Breton about you could say what is called the sustainable pathway for tourism in Europe, and there was a guy from one of the biggest cruise lines in Europe attending that meeting, and he told me that right now you cannot actually as a cruise line get financing because of sustainability. And it just illustrates that's a really burning platform for them. They have to solve this issue. We haven't been in that situation. Maybe in little sectors of our industry, you know, I talked about animals and professional care and how that agenda has probably pushed some things in the last few years. But we hadn't had the burning platform in general, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're not quite there where we should be. We are behind.
Yes.
Shani, I'm really pleased that both of you brought up the point about that people are just as sustainable as the environment, and just what a complex issue that is. And it really is. So as long as we got to keep talking about that. So that's really cool. Thank you, Andreas. Didn't think about the financing angle. That's a strong case. All right. Any last questions? I know we're a few minutes late, but if there's any more, you've got such a brilliant opportunity.
Yes, very quickly.
Okay.
Thank you both. Thank you both, Andreas and Shoni, for your input. Andreas, you mentioned creating a culture to be successful long term. I was wondering, how does this change the creative process in the attractions to consider sustainability?
So it's
Good question.
yeah.
Good question.
I did a workshop a few months ago with one of the leading manufacturers of rides in our industry. We have a few from them. I know Choni has a few from them as well. Then you can do the math. And it was kind of interesting how to see how they are now suddenly waking up to this agenda, because if you do a procurement process today, if we do it or if Disney does it, suddenly there are actually a lot of sustainability requirements they have to adhere to, whether it's sourcing or it's workers' rights or it's energy consumption long term or whatever. And I can honestly say that for the first time in the history of our company, we actually this year has bought a ride that was comparable to another ride because it had a lower energy consumption. So I think it is starting to creep in more decision making. I think the creative process is obviously still needs to be creative. You know, it's about experiences and not just energy consumption, what we do. But I do think that we will see a lot more requirements, especially from the bigger players in the future. It will be an integral part of project development.
We need to know before we have any new project, which is the energy we will need for that, which are the emissions that is going to cause, and how this new ride project, hotel, whatever it is going to impact on people. And we need to make sure that diversity and inclusivity is always in any new project. That is our learning. It's what I told you before. Sustainability is something that you learn day by day. It's something that you need to improve because there is always another angle to be considered. And for me, it's a pity that the suppliers, as Andrea says, they have not offered to us. and we have no thought. So it has not happened.
I think in final answer to Philippe's question is it doesn't matter the limitations, the creatives need to come up with it. Because that's how you're more creative anyway. You know, the more limitations, you know, show us what you got kind of thing. But yeah, it is disappointing because the ride vendors should be coming up with some of these solutions at this point and not waiting for us to be indicating to them what we need to have.
Yeah.
We're their customers and they should be saying, hey, we've been giving this some thought. Here's what we should do. Are you open to this discussion? You know, so that all parts of the industry are moving in the same direction. So that's, I'm going to say that's probably the best comment to close on. Thank you, Shomni. That's perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah. So good. And thank you, everybody. And wow, that was a lot. But thank you so much. Really appreciate it, you guys, and for being involved in the program altogether. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you,
We
Laura.
really appreciate it.
Thank
All
you.
right, guys, have a
you.
good night, everybody. Take
Bye
care.
bye.
Merry
Bye bye.
Christmas.
Take
If I
care,
don't see
bye-bye.
you. Happy holidays, all that good
Happy
stuff.